Zarathe stared at the blue hologram floating above her desk. The message had arrived just minutes ago, but she had read it 12 times already. Each time the words remained the same, and each time her stomach twisted a little more. Selected for Cultural Exchange Program. Mandatory participation. Subject: Human male, designation David Chen. Report to Station Harmony in 7 cycles. She touched her pale blue skin nervously. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the communication device. The call connected quickly and her mother's face appeared on the screen. Lady Valana looked as elegant as always, her silver hair perfectly arranged and her expression calm. "Mother, I received a message," Zarathe began. "Ah yes, the human program." Her mother's voice carried no emotion. "We heard the news. The council has chosen you for the diplomatic initiative. But mother, they want me to mate with one of them. A human." Zarathe's voice rose higher than proper for a Celestian lady. Lady Valana's eyes grew cold. "Lower your voice, daughter. The servants might hear." She paused, then continued. "Yes, we know what the program involves. The council believes that creating hybrid offspring will prevent war with these creatures." Zarathe felt sick. She had studied humans in her xenobiology classes. The reports were terrifying. Humans were violent beings who fought with their bare hands. They ate the flesh of dead animals. They had no proper technology to control their emotions. They were basically wild animals that had learned to use tools. "Surely there must be some mistake," Zarathe said. "I am a scientist. I work with plants and peaceful organisms. I cannot possibly be suited for this." Her father's voice came from somewhere off-screen. "There is no mistake. The family honor is at stake." Lord Kethan moved into view beside his wife. His face was stern as always. "The Velthara family has served the Empire for 1,000 years. We will not bring shame to our name by refusing a direct order from the Council. But father, these humans are savages. They still have wars. They eat meat. They feel emotions without any control. How can I possibly bond with such a creature?" "You will do what is required," Lord Kethan said firmly. "The Empire's peace depends on this program. If these humans become our enemies, millions will die. Your personal comfort is not important." Zarathe wanted to argue more, but she knew it was useless. In Celestian society, family honor mattered more than individual desires. She had been taught this since childhood. "What do we know about this David Chen?" she asked quietly. Lady Valana consulted her datapad. "Very little. The human authorities were not very cooperative with our information requests. We know he is male, age 28 in human years, and he works with animals." "Animals?" Zarathe shuddered. "What kind of work?" "Some type of medical practice, we believe." The translation was unclear. This made it even worse. If he worked with animals, he was probably covered in dirt and disease. Humans did not have proper cleaning technology like Celestians. They probably smelled terrible. "There is more," Lord Kethan added. "The human government has requested that families not share detailed information about their chosen representatives. They claim it will make the first meetings more natural, whatever that means." Zarathe laughed bitterly. "Natural? Yes, I suppose meeting a savage creature is very natural. Watch your tone," her mother warned. "You will represent our family and our planet. You will behave with dignity even if your partner cannot." After the call ended, Zarathe sat alone in her laboratory. She looked at her current research project, a beautiful symbiotic relationship between 2 plant species from different worlds. The plants had learned to share nutrients and protect each other. It was elegant and peaceful. How different that was from what awaited her. Instead of studying beautiful, civilized organisms, she would be forced to live with a violent, unpredictable human. She activated her computer and searched for more information about humans. The official reports were carefully written, but she could read between the lines. Humans were described as physically robust, which meant they were violent. They were emotionally expressive, which meant they had no self-control. They were adaptable, which meant they were unpredictable and possibly dangerous. One report mentioned that humans still practice something called sports, where they deliberately hurt each other for entertainment. Another report said they kept weapons in their homes. A third report described how they consumed the flesh of other creatures as their primary source of nutrition. Zarathe felt nauseated. How could the council expect her to share living space with such a being? How could they expect her to allow such a creature to touch her? The thought of producing offspring with a human made her skin crawl. She tried to imagine what David Chen might look like. Humans were larger than Celestians and covered in coarse hair. They had thick, clumsy fingers instead of the elegant, slim digits of her people. Their skin was rough and often covered in scars from their violent lifestyle. Their eyes were small and dark, lacking the beautiful silver color of Celestian eyes. The worst part was their smell. According to the reports, humans produced strong odors from their skin. They had to wash frequently because they secreted waste products through their pores. It was disgusting. Zarathe spent the next few days trying to find a way out of the assignment. She contacted friends in the government, but they all gave her the same answer. The program was too important to the Empire's security. Every chosen participant had to complete their assignment. She even considered claiming illness, but Celestian medical technology was too advanced. Any fake illness would be detected immediately. As the departure date approached, Zarathe tried to prepare herself mentally. She practiced meditation techniques to control her revulsion. She studied human customs so she would not accidentally anger her assigned partner. The last thing she wanted was to make a violent human even more dangerous. Her friends came to see her off. They all expressed sympathy and promised to remember her sacrifice for the Empire. Some even brought gifts, special perfumes to mask any unpleasant odors, and emergency communication devices in case she needed rescue. Try to think of it as an extended research project, her colleague Miraset suggested. You will be observing a primitive species in their natural habitat. Except I will be living with the specimen, Zarathe replied glumly. Perhaps you will discover something interesting about their biology, another friend offered. Maybe your scientific training will help you understand their behavior patterns. Zarathe nodded, but she was not optimistic. From everything she had learned, humans were too chaotic and unpredictable to understand properly. They acted on emotion instead of logic. They made decisions based on feelings rather than careful analysis. How could any rational being understand such creatures? The transport ship was comfortable, at least. Celestian technology ensured a smooth journey to Station Harmony, the neutral meeting point between human and Celestian space. During the trip, Zarathe tried to imagine different scenarios for her first meeting with David Chen. In some scenarios, he would be aggressive and threatening. In others, he would be dirty and crude. In the worst scenarios, he would try to touch her immediately, not understanding proper Celestian greeting protocols. She practiced different responses for each possibility. If he tried to grab her, she would step back and explain personal space requirements. If he spoke too loudly, she would demonstrate proper volume levels. If he smelled bad, she would politely suggest cleaning facilities. As the station grew larger in the view screen, Zarathe felt her last hopes fading. Soon she would meet the savage creature who was supposed to become her mate. The thought filled her with dread and disgust. She had no idea that everything she believed about humans was about to change. Station Harmony was bigger than Zarathe had expected. The neutral facility floated in space between human and Celestian territories, designed by both species working together. Half of the station used Celestian architecture with smooth, curved walls and soft lighting. The other half was built in human style with straight lines and brighter illumination. Zarathe stood in the arrival bay, trying to calm her nerves. She wore her finest diplomatic robes, pale blue silk that matched her skin tone with silver threading that caught the light. Her silver hair was arranged in the traditional Celestian style, pulled back to show her elegant neck. Ambassador Quillen stood beside her. Reviewing the meeting protocols one more time. Remember, these humans have different greeting customs, the ambassador said. They may try to grasp your hand with theirs. This is not an attack, it is called a handshake. Try not to show disgust. What if he tries to embrace me? Zarathe asked nervously. Unlikely during a first meeting, but possible. Humans are very physical creatures. Just remain calm and step back if needed. The arrival alarm chimed and Zarathe's heart began beating faster. Through the transparent wall, she could see a human transport ship docking with the station. In just minutes, she would meet the savage she was supposed to bond with. She tried to picture David Chen one more time. He would probably be tall and muscular, with scars on his face from fighting. His hair would be messy and unkempt. His clothes would be rough and practical, designed for physical work rather than elegance. He would walk with the confident swagger of a predator. The airlock doors opened with a soft hiss. Ambassador Torres, the human representative, stepped through first. He was a middle-aged man with graying hair and kind eyes. Behind him came two other humans in official uniforms. Then David Chen entered the bay. Zarathe blinked in surprise. This was not what she had expected at all. David was indeed taller than most Celestians, but he was not the brutal warrior she had imagined. He was lean rather than heavily muscled, with gentle features and intelligent dark eyes. His black hair was neatly styled, not wild and unkempt. He wore simple but clean clothes, dark pants and a light blue shirt that looked soft to the touch. Most surprising of all, he moved with quiet grace rather than aggressive swagger. His steps were careful and measured, as if he was trying not to disturb anyone around him. Ambassador Torres made the introductions. Ambassador Quilen, Scientist Zarathe, please meet Dr. David Chen. David stepped forward and Zarathe tensed, expecting him to grab her hand forcefully. Instead, he stopped at a respectful distance and bowed slightly in the Celestian manner. Honored to meet you, he said in careful Celestian. His pronunciation was not perfect, but it was clear he had studied their language. I hope my words are correct. I am still learning. Zarathe stared at him in shock. He had learned their greeting customs. He was speaking their language, and his voice was soft and pleasant, not the harsh growl she had expected. Your Celestian is very good, she managed to say. David smiled, and Zarathe noticed that his teeth were clean and straight, not the fangs she had imagined. Thank you. I have been studying for 6 months. Your language is beautiful but difficult. Ambassador Keelan stepped forward. Dr. Chen, welcome to Station Harmony. We hope your stay will be educational for both species. I hope so too, David replied. He turned back to Zarathe. I understand you are a scientist. What is your field of study? Xenobiology, Zarathe answered automatically. I specialize in plant interactions across different worlds. David's eyes lit up with genuine interest. That sounds fascinating. I work with animals on Earth, but I have always been curious about plant biology. Do you study symbiotic relationships? Zarathe nodded slowly. How did he know about symbiosis? Yes, I research how different plant species can help each other survive. Like nitrogen fixing? David asked. We have plants on Earth that can take nitrogen from the air and share it with other plants through their roots. Zarathe's mouth fell open slightly. That was exactly the type of relationship she studied, but far more complex than she had thought possible on a primitive world like Earth. You know about nitrogen fixing? She asked. A little, David said modestly. Earth's ecosystems are full of cooperative relationships. Plants that share nutrients, animals that clean each other, fungi that connect entire forests underground. It is all connected. This was not going at all as Zarathe had expected. She had prepared for violence, for crude behavior, for unpleasant smells. Instead, she was having an intelligent conversation about her own research field. The group moved to a conference room where the formal meetings would take place. As they walked, Zarathe found herself studying David more carefully. He did not smell bad at all. In fact, he had a pleasant, clean scent. His movements were controlled and purposeful, not wild or unpredictable. When they passed a Celestian child in the corridor, David smiled and stepped aside to give the young one more room. In the conference room, both ambassadors began discussing the technical details of the cultural exchange program. Zarathe only half listened. She was too busy trying to understand what she was seeing. During a break in the formal discussions, David approached her again. I hope you do not mind me asking, he said quietly, but are you nervous about this arrangement? I know it must be strange to be matched with someone from another species. Zarathe was startled by his directness, but also by his consideration. Yes, I am nervous, she admitted. So am I, David said with a gentle laugh. I have read about Celestian culture, but I am sure I will make mistakes. Please be patient with me if I do something wrong. This was completely backwards from what she had expected. She had assumed the human would be arrogant and demanding. Instead, he was humble and considerate. What kind of work do you do with animals? She asked, curious despite herself. I am a veterinarian, David explained. I help sick and injured animals get better. I also work with animal rescue groups to save creatures that have been abandoned or mistreated. You help animals? Zarathe tried to understand. But humans eat animals, do you not? David nodded. Some humans do eat meat, yes. But that does not mean we do not care about animal welfare. Many humans work very hard to make sure animals are treated well, even the ones raised for food. That seems contradictory, Zarathe said. Perhaps, David agreed. Human nature is full of contradictions. We can be cruel and kind at the same time. We can love something and still use it. It is not always logical, but it is honest. As the day continued, Zarathe found more of her assumptions challenged. When lunch was served, David did not eat like a savage. He used utensils properly and chewed quietly. When Ambassador Torres made a joke that some Celestians might find offensive, David quickly changed the subject to avoid embarrassment. Most surprising was what happened during a minor crisis. One of the station's atmospheric processors began making strange noises, and the Celestian technicians could not identify the problem. The station's safety systems activated, sealing off that section. While everyone else stood around discussing what to do, David quietly asked if he could look at the system. The Celestian engineers were reluctant to let a primitive human touch their advanced technology. "Please," David said. "I may not understand your exact systems, but mechanical problems often have similar causes." "Let me just look," Ambassador Quillen agreed, mostly to avoid diplomatic tension. David studied the readouts for a few minutes, then asked for permission to examine the actual machinery. The Celestian engineers watched nervously as he opened access panels and peered inside. "There," David said after a few minutes. "One of your filter meshes has come loose and is vibrating against the housing. It is probably just a loose mounting bracket." The Celestian technicians checked his diagnosis and found he was exactly right. A simple repair fixed the problem completely. "How did you know?" one of the engineers asked. David shrugged. "I have worked on many different machines. Sometimes the simplest explanation is the correct one." As they walked back to their quarters that evening, Zarathe found herself confused and troubled. Nothing about David matched what she had been told about humans. He was intelligent, considerate, and skilled. He had solved a problem that stumped Celestian technology. "May I ask you something?" she said as they reached her door. "Of course." "Are all humans like you?" David considered the question seriously. "No, not all. Humans are very different from each other. Some are kind, some are cruel. Some are smart, some are not. Some are gentle, some are violent. We are not a uniform species." "But you seem so civilized," Zarathe said. David smiled sadly. "Is that surprising? Did you expect me to be a savage?" Zarathe felt her cheeks flush blue with embarrassment. The reports we received described us as violent primitives?" David guessed. "Some humans are violent, it is true. But some Celestians are probably cruel too, are they not?" Zarathe had to admit this was true. She had met plenty of cruel and arrogant Celestians in her life. "Perhaps," David said gently, "we should judge each other based on who we are as individuals, not what our species is supposed to be like." As Zarathe lay in her bed that night, she stared at the ceiling and tried to make sense of the day. Everything she thought she knew about humans was wrong. David was nothing like the savage creature she had expected to meet. For the first time since over the next few days, Zarathe spent more time with David as part of the cultural exchange program. Each interaction continued to surprise her and challenge everything she thought she knew about humans. On the third day, she discovered David practicing something called martial arts in the station's recreation area. When she first saw him, her old fears returned. Here was proof that humans were violent creatures after all. David was moving through a series of precise movements, his body flowing from one position to another. But as Zarathe watched, she realized something strange. His movements were not aggressive or wild. They were controlled, almost like a dance. His breathing was steady and calm. His face showed concentration, not anger. When he finished, David noticed her watching and walked over. "I am sorry if I startled you," he said. "I was practicing Tai Chi. It helps me stay calm and focused." "What is Tai Chi?" Zarathe asked carefully. "It is a form of martial art, but not for fighting," David explained. "It is about balance and inner peace. The movements teach discipline and self-control." Zarathe frowned. "But martial arts are for combat, are they not?" "Some are," David agreed. "But Tai Chi is different. It teaches us to be strong without being violent, to be prepared for danger while hoping for peace." He demonstrated a few movements slowly, explaining how each one represented different principles: flowing like water, standing firm like a mountain, bending like a tree in the wind without breaking. "Would you like to try?" David offered. Zarathe hesitated. Celestians did not engage in physical activities like this, but her curiosity overcame her caution. David showed her the basic movements, guiding her gently without actually touching her. His instructions were patient and encouraging. To her surprise, Zarathy found the movement soothing rather than aggressive. "Very good," David said when she completed a simple sequence. "You have natural grace." Later that day, they visited the station's dining area together. Zarathy had been dreading this moment because she knew David would eat meat, and she expected it to be disgusting. But when David's meal arrived, she was surprised again. The meat was prepared carefully and presented elegantly. David ate slowly and thoughtfully, not like a savage tearing at raw flesh. "This is from a farm on Earth," David explained, noticing her stare. "The animals are raised in open fields where they can roam freely. They live good lives before they give their lives to feed us." "You think about the animals that died?" Zarathy asked. "Of course," David said seriously. "Taking a life, even for food, is a responsibility. We should honor what we consume and not waste it." This perspective confused Zarathy. She had expected humans to be thoughtless about killing animals. Instead, David seemed to understand the weight of what he was doing. "On my world," David continued, "many people choose not to eat meat at all. They believe it is wrong to kill animals for food. I respect their choice even though I choose differently." "Why do you choose to eat meat if you understand that animals die?" Zarathy asked. David thought for a moment. "Because I believe that life and death are part of the same cycle. Plants and animals feed each other in nature. A wolf that kills a deer is not evil. It is just following its nature. Humans evolved to eat both plants and meat. I try to do so respectfully." That evening, there was a diplomatic reception where representatives from both species mingled together. Zarathy wore her finest gown and expected David to appear in whatever crude formal wear humans used. Instead, David arrived wearing a perfectly fitted black suit that looked elegant and sophisticated. His hair was styled neatly, and he moved through the crowd with quiet confidence. But what impressed Zarathy most was how he behaved with the other guests. When elderly Ambassador Radon began telling a long, boring story about ancient Celestian poetry, David listened politely and asked thoughtful questions. When young Miraket spilled wine on her dress, David quickly helped her clean it up without making her feel embarrassed. Most remarkably, when Ambassador Torres made a comment that could be interpreted as insulting to Celestian culture, David smoothly redirected the conversation to safer topics. He prevented a diplomatic incident without anyone realizing what he had done. "How did you learn to do that?" Zarathy asked him later. "Do what?" David seemed genuinely puzzled. "Handle that difficult moment with Ambassador Torres. You prevented conflict so smoothly." David shrugged. "Conflict usually happens because people misunderstand each other. If you help them understand instead of fighting, problems often solve themselves. But what if someone deliberately tries to cause trouble? Then you stay calm and do not give them the reaction they want," David said simply. "Anger feeds on anger. Kindness often starves it." The biggest test came on the 5th day when an emergency alarm sounded throughout the station. A critical power coupling had failed in the main reactor, and backup systems were struggling to compensate. The station was in danger of losing life support. Celestian engineers worked frantically to fix the problem, but their advanced automated systems were not responding properly. The failure seemed to be in a section of the reactor that could not be reached safely by their repair robots. "We need someone to go in manually," the chief engineer reported to the assembled diplomats. "But the radiation levels are too high for extended exposure." "How long would someone need to be inside?" Ambassador Quillen asked. "At least 10 minutes to replace the coupling. But our medical experts say that even with protection suits, the radiation exposure could cause serious illness." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. Someone would have to risk their life to save the station. "I will go," David said quietly. Everyone turned to stare at him. Ambassador Torres started to object. "David, you are not trained for this type of work." "No, but I have worked on mechanical systems before," David replied. "And I am probably the most expendable person here." "You are not expendable," Zarathy said quickly, surprising herself with her vehemence. David smiled at her. "Thank you, but if someone must take the risk, it should be me. I am here as a representative of my species. This is what humans do. We protect others, even at cost to ourselves." Before anyone could stop him, David was already moving toward the equipment lockers. He pulled on a radiation protection suit and gathered the tools the engineers said he would need. "Dr. Chen, this is not necessary," Ambassador Quillen protested. We can contact our homeworlds for additional technical support. By then we might all be dead, David said calmly. It is better to act now. Zarathe watched in amazement as David entered the dangerous reactor section. Through the monitoring screens, she could see him working quickly but carefully, following the engineer's instructions precisely. His movements were steady despite the danger. The radiation alarms grew louder as he worked. Everyone in the control room held their breath. Zarathe found herself praying to deities she had never believed in. After what felt like hours but was actually only 12 minutes, David's voice came over the communication system. Coupling replaced. Systems should be coming back online now. The engineers confirmed that power was restored and radiation levels were dropping. David had saved them all. When he emerged from the reactor section, David was pale and shaky from radiation exposure, but he was smiling. Well, that was interesting, he said with typical human understatement. The medical team immediately began treating him for radiation poisoning. It would take several days for him to recover fully, but the doctor said he would be fine. As Zarathe sat beside David's bed in the medical bay, she tried to understand what had just happened. This human had risked his life to save a station full of people he barely knew. He had not hesitated, had not asked for rewards, had not tried to negotiate better treatment for himself. Why did you do it? She asked when David was awake and alert. Do what? He still seemed genuinely puzzled by the question. Risk your life for us. We are strangers. Some of us have been rude to you. You owe us nothing. David considered this seriously. I did it because it needed to be done. When someone is in danger, you help them if you can. That is what being human means. But you could have died. Yes, David agreed. But if I had not acted, we all would have died. The choice was easy. Zarathe stared at him in wonder. Everything she had been taught about humans was backwards. They were not savage or primitive. They were brave and selfless in ways her own people rarely showed. That night, as she lay in her quarters, Zarathe realized something that shocked her. She was no longer afraid of David. In fact, she was beginning to respect him. More than that, she was beginning to understand that humans possessed something Celestians had lost in their pursuit of perfection. The willingness to sacrifice themselves for others, the courage to act when action was needed, and the wisdom to know that strength came not from avoiding all risks, but from choosing which risks were worth taking. For the first time since arriving at the station, Zarathe began to wonder what else humans might teach her species, and for the first time since learning about her assignment, she began to think that bonding with David might not be a punishment after all. It might be the greatest opportunity of her life. The 2-week cultural exchange period was coming to an end. Zarathe sat in her quarters, staring at the official forms that would determine her future. One form would confirm her agreement to the bonding ceremony with David. The other would formally decline the arrangement and request transport back to Celestian space. She had been avoiding this decision for days, but time was running out. A soft chime indicated someone was at her door. Come in, she called. David entered carrying 2 cups of tea. He had learned that Celestians enjoyed herbal beverages, and he had taken to preparing them in the human style, which somehow made them taste better. I brought you some tea, he said, setting 1 cup on her desk. You looked stressed during dinner tonight. Thank you. Zarathe accepted the cup gratefully. David always seemed to know when she needed small kindnesses like this. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Over the past 2 weeks, they had grown easy with each other's company. David never pushed her to talk when she was thinking, and she had learned to appreciate his quiet presence. Finally, David spoke. The decision forms are due tomorrow. Yes, Zarathe said quietly. Have you decided what you want to do? Zarathe looked at him carefully. What do you want me to do? David was quiet for a long moment. I want you to choose what will make you happy, he said finally. Nothing else matters to me. But what? About the political implications? The diplomatic program? Politics should never force someone into a life they do not want, David said firmly. If you choose to return to your world, I will tell everyone that you gave the program an honest try. No one will blame you. This was so different from what her own family had told her. They cared only about honor and duty. David cared about her happiness. What about you? Zarathe asked. What will you do if I leave? I will probably return to Earth and go back to my veterinary practice. Maybe I will write about my experiences here. Help other humans understand that Celestians are not the cold, emotionless beings our reports described. Zarathy felt a pang of something she did not immediately recognize. The thought of David leaving made her sad. You would not be angry if I chose to leave? She asked. Angry? No. David smiled gently. Disappointed, maybe. I have enjoyed getting to know you, but I would never want you to stay if you felt trapped. That night, Zarathy could not sleep. She walked to the observation deck and stared out at the stars, trying to sort through her confused feelings. 2 weeks ago, she had been horrified at the thought of bonding with a human. Now the thought of never seeing David again felt worse than staying, but it was not that simple. If she chose to bond with David, she would be giving up her old life forever. She would have to live among humans, on Earth or on mixed colonies. Her family would probably disown her. Her career in Celestian science would be over. More than that, bonding meant having children together. Hybrid children who would belong fully to neither species. What kind of life would they have? She was still wrestling with these questions when her personal communicator chimed, a message from home. Her mother's face appeared on the screen, but Lady Villana looked different. Her usual perfect composure was cracked, and her eyes were red as if she had been crying. Zarathy, we have heard disturbing reports about your behavior on the station. What reports? Zarathy asked, though she suspected she knew. That you have been seen spending voluntary time with the human? That you appear to be developing feelings for the creature? Zarathy said nothing. Her mother continued. The family council has met. We have decided that if you proceed with this bonding, you will be formally cast out from the family. Your name will be removed from our records. You will have no home to return to on Celestia. The words hit Zarathy like a physical blow. She had expected disapproval, but not complete rejection. Mother, do not call me that if you choose to contaminate yourself with human DNA, Lady Villana said coldly. We will tell people that our daughter died in a transport accident. It will be easier than explaining what you have become. The communication ended abruptly. Zarathy sat in the darkness, feeling more alone than she had ever felt in her life. The next morning, she found David in the station's garden area, tending to some earth plants that had been brought for the cultural displays. He looked up when she approached, and his face immediately showed concern. What is wrong? He asked gently. Zarathy told him about the message from her family. David listened without interrupting, his expression growing sadder with each detail. I am sorry, he said when she finished. That must be very painful. They will disown me if I stay, Zarathy said. I will lose everything, my family, my home, my career, everything I have ever known. David nodded slowly. Then you should return to Celestia. Zarathy stared at him. Just like that? You do not want to try to convince me to stay? Of course I want you to stay, David said quietly. These 2 weeks with you have been the best of my life. But I will not ask you to give up everything for me. What if I want to give it up? Zarathy asked, surprising herself with the words. David looked at her carefully. Do you? Zarathy was quiet for a long time, thinking. Finally, she spoke. When I first came here, I thought humans were savage creatures. I was disgusted by the idea of bonding with one of you. But you have shown me that everything I believed was wrong. She gestured to the plants around them. You understand symbiosis better than most Celestian scientists. You showed me that different species can help each other grow stronger. David remained silent, letting her work through her thoughts. My family thinks they are protecting our purity by rejecting anything alien, Zarathy continued. But what if purity is not strength? What if it is weakness? She looked directly at David. You risked your life to save this station. Not because you had to, but because you chose to. That is not savage behavior. That is the most civilized thing I have ever seen. Zarathy. Let me finish, she said. I have spent my whole life trying to be the perfect Celestian daughter, following rules, meeting expectations, never taking risks. But what has that given me? A sterile life with no real meaning. She reached out and took David's hand. His skin was warm and rough compared to her smooth Celestian flesh, but it felt right somehow. You have shown me what it means to truly live, to care about something more than yourself, to choose love over fear. She paused. If my family cannot accept that, then they are not worthy of my loyalty. David squeezed her hand gently. Are you sure? Once you make this choice, there is no going back. I am sure, Zarathe said. But I have conditions. David raised an eyebrow. Conditions? If we bond, we do it as equals. I will not be your submissive alien wife. I will pursue my own career and my own interests. We will make decisions together. Of course, David said immediately. I would never want anything else. And our children will know both cultures. They will be proud of their mixed heritage, not ashamed of it. Yes, David agreed. They will be the best of both worlds. Zarathe smiled, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. Then I choose to stay. I choose you. I choose the future we can build together. David's face lit up with joy. Are you certain? More certain than I have ever been about anything, Zarathe said. They submitted their bonding agreement forms that afternoon. The ceremony would take place in 3 days, allowing time for both families to be notified. Zarathe received no response from her Celestian family. David's family sent enthusiastic messages of welcome and support. My parents are excited to meet you, David told her, showing her the messages. My mother wants to know if there are any special foods you like so she can learn to cook them. The contrast between their families' reactions was stark, but Zarathe felt no regret. She had chosen love over duty, growth over stagnation, hope over fear. And for the first time in her life, she felt truly free. The bonding ceremony took place in Station Harmony's central garden, where earth plants and Celestian flora grew side by side in beautiful harmony. Representatives from both governments attended, along with the crew of the station who had watched Zarathe and David's relationship develop. Zarathe wore a gown that blended both cultures, Celestian silk in traditional pale blue, but cut in a simpler human style that allowed for easier movement. David wore a formal suit with Celestian-style embroidery around the collar. The ceremony itself was brief but meaningful. They exchanged vows in both languages, promising to honor each other's cultures while building something new together. When Ambassador Quillen pronounced them bonded, David kissed Zarathe gently. It was her first kiss, and it was nothing like the violent assault she had once feared. It was tender and sweet, full of promise for their future. After the ceremony, there was a reception where both species mingled more freely than ever before. Zarathe noticed Celestian diplomats asking humans about their customs and technologies. Human representatives showed genuine interest in Celestian art and philosophy. Look at them, David said quietly, nodding toward a group where a Celestian engineer was explaining advanced power systems to fascinated human scientists. This is how it should be, learning from each other instead of fearing each other. 6 months later, Zarathe and David had established their new home on a research station at the border between human and Celestian space. The facility was designed to study beneficial exchanges between the two species, not just technological, but biological and cultural as well. Zarathe's research had taken an exciting new direction. Instead of studying plant symbiosis, she was now investigating genetic compatibility between humans and Celestians. Her preliminary findings were remarkable. Look at this, she told David excitedly, showing him her latest data. Human genetic diversity is incredible. You have maintained adaptive capabilities that my species lost centuries ago. David studied the charts. What does that mean exactly? It means that human Celestian hybrids could have advantages that neither parent species possesses alone. Enhanced intelligence from Celestians, but with human adaptability and emotional resilience. Extended lifespans from Celestians, but with human creativity and innovation. The implications were staggering. Rather than being genetic outcasts, their children might represent the next step in evolution for both species. There is more, Zarathe continued. I have been corresponding with Celestian scientists who are studying human culture. They are discovering that many traits we dismissed as primitive are actually advanced survival mechanisms. She pulled up another file. Human emotional expression, for example. We thought it was a sign of poor self-control, but it actually serves important social functions. Bonding communities together, communicating needs quickly, motivating individuals to take risks for the greater good. David smiled. Like when I went into that reactor? Exactly. A purely logical being would have calculated the risks and decided not to act. But your human instincts told you to protect others regardless of personal cost. That kind of selfless behavior has kept human communities alive for thousands of years. They were interrupted by a communication from Dr. Miraket, Zarathe's former colleague on Celestia. Her friend's face appeared on the screen, looking excited. Zarathe, I hope you are well. I have news from home. Hello, Mira. What kind of news? Your research papers about human genetics have caused quite a stir in the scientific community. The Council of Sciences wants to fund a full investigation into human adaptive capabilities. Zarathe felt a surge of satisfaction. Really? More than that, Mira continued. Some families are beginning to question whether the cultural exchange program should be expanded. They want their own children to have opportunities to learn from human partners. This was an unexpected development. What about the opposition? My family and others like them? Mira's expression grew more serious. There is still resistance, but it is weakening, especially after the incident with the Vorthon attack. What incident? David asked, moving into view of the screen. Oh, hello, Dr. Chen. Congratulations on your bonding. Mira smiled warmly. 3 weeks ago, a Vorthon raiding fleet attacked one of our outer colonies. Our defense forces responded with typical Celestian tactics, careful, calculated maneuvers designed to minimize losses. Zarathe nodded. This was standard Celestian military doctrine. But we had a human military advisor with the fleet, Mira continued. Commander Sarah Martinez, part of the officer exchange program. When the Vorthons adapted to our defensive strategy and began winning, Commander Martinez suggested a different approach. What kind of approach? David asked. A direct assault on their command ship. Completely contrary to Celestian tactical doctrine. Our admirals thought it was suicidal, but Commander Martinez convinced them to try it. Mira's excitement grew as she continued the story. She led the attack herself, using human combat techniques that the Vorthons had never seen before. Aggressive, unpredictable, emotionally driven. Everything we always thought was primitive about human warfare. And? Zarathe prompted. Complete victory. The Vorthons were so confused by the illogical human tactics that their entire fleet retreated in disarray. Commander Martinez saved the colony and proved that human primitive behavior can be superior to our advanced logic. After Mira's call ended, Zarathe and David sat quietly, absorbing the implications. It is happening, Zarathe said finally. Both our species are learning that we need each other. The question is whether we can overcome centuries of prejudice fast enough, David replied. They got their answer sooner than expected. A few weeks later, Ambassador Quillen arrived at their station with surprising news. The Celestian Council has voted to make the cultural exchange program permanent, he announced. Furthermore, they want to establish joint research facilities like yours throughout our territory. That is wonderful, Zarathe said. But what changed their minds so quickly? Ambassador Quillen smiled. You did. Your research, your example, and the success of other human Celestian partnerships have proven that cooperation makes both species stronger. He handed them an official document. The Council has also voted to restore your family status, Zarathe. Your scientific contributions have brought great honor to Celestian civilization. Zarathe felt tears in her eyes. After months of being disowned, her people were welcoming her back. There is one more thing, the ambassador continued. Both governments want you to head a new joint research institute. The facility will study beneficial traits from both species and develop programs to share them across our civilizations. David looked at Zarathe. What do you think? I think, Zarathe said slowly, that this is exactly what we hoped for when we bonded. A chance to build bridges between our peoples. 1 year later, the Chen Velthara Institute for Interspecies Studies was the most successful research facility in either civilization. Scientists from both species worked together to unlock the secrets of beneficial genetic and cultural exchange. Zarathy stood in the Institute's observation deck, watching human and Celestian children play together in the facility's school. The children switched effortlessly between languages and customs, equally comfortable with both cultures. David joined her, placing a gentle hand on her growing belly. Their own child would be born in a few months, the first of a new generation that would know no prejudice between species. "Any regrets?" David asked softly. Zarathy leaned back against him, feeling contentment fill her heart. "Only one. What is that?" "I regret that it took so long for our species to realize what you humans knew all along." "Which is?" Zarathy turned in his arms and smiled. "That diversity is not weakness. That different does not mean inferior. And that love is always stronger than fear." Through the window she could see the stars where both their species had once lived in isolation. Now, ships traveled regularly between human and Celestian worlds, carrying not just cargo and diplomats but families and friends and lovers who had found strength in their differences. The future stretched ahead of them, bright with possibilities that neither species could have achieved alone, and at the center of it all was the simple truth that had brought them together. That sometimes the most beautiful things in the universe came from the union of opposites. Their child kicked gently, as if agreeing with the thought. Zarathy smiled and placed her hand over David's. Their daughter would grow up in a universe where being different was celebrated, not feared. Where the wild human heart and the elegant Celestian mind worked together to create something greater than either could be alone. It was, Zarathy thought, the most beautiful symbiosis of all,